So let's begin with the Syria-China strategic partnership. In the days, weeks leading up to now, the 74th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, you had Bashar Al-Assad visiting China to meet with Xi Jinping and other high-level officials,
Yeah.
where they inked, I think it was within the first couple days, they inked the Syria-China strategic partnership. And I wanted to ask you just how big this is, because this was the first visit since 2004. It's quite a long
Yeah.
time. Syria has been dealing with. We just talked about in relation to Niger and the Sahel and the issue with jihadists. Syria
Yeah.
knows a lot about this, given that the United States, literally, you can go look into the Washington Post, the Pentagon, the CIA, literally funding these groups against each other sometimes, but really in an effort to conduct regime change against um, against
Yeah.
Assad and the Assad government. So how big is this? Because uh, I'm going to show videos later just how he was received by the media and by the people of China. But uh, what's your take on the significance of this, and what does it mean for Syria's future, and maybe even more broadly than that?
Yeah, it's very good because they've been trying to isolate the government there for a very long time. And the only countries that were dealing with Syria militarily and economically were, I mean, Lebanon, and then Iran, and Russia, and China. China for many years was supporting Syria also at the UN Security Council. So whenever the U.S. would try to put sanctions on Syria, or have the UN authorize some kind of military action, Russia and China would be blocking it. So that was also a huge help. And the strategic partnership, China has been getting not only a lot of countries on board with the New Silk Road and Belt and Road Initiative, but signing these strategic partnerships with Iran just within the last 2 years. And these are very important because where the United States has tried to isolate these countries, China has seen it as an opportunity to actually go and um, uh, uh, have strategic partnerships with them instead of marginalizing them. And I think it's good because China for thousands of years, China, Iran, Syria, this is literally where the Silk Road was. For thousands of years, you've had trade and partnership, economic partnership, cultural exchange between these countries and these regions for thousands of years. So it makes perfect sense that they would, really cement it and put it into writing and commit to it. And I think it's a really good thing. Many ancient cities in Syria, like Palmyra and Aleppo, were part of the original Silk Road, the ancient Silk Road, and it's good to know that they will be part of the new Silk Road. And also for China to have access to the Mediterranean Sea through the Latakia port in Syria is very important. So of course, China could also do that with other countries in the Middle East, because China doesn't, China maintains a neutral policy, and doesn't. I mean, for for example, in the Haifa port, the Israeli port, China's invested a lot in there. Now, I at least respect China because they are consistent when they say that they're going to be neutral. And although obviously we would prefer that they don't engage with the Israelis, but at least when they say they're neutral, they really are, and it's not like some political gimmick or something like that. And it's not like they have like superficially pretended to be to engage both with Israel and then with Syria and Palestine. No, they've actually helped Syria. Like I said, 8 times they vetoed resolutions that were against Syria at the United Nations. And so Latakia port is going to be much more important than Haifa, and any of the others. And I think it's no coincidence that the Israelis have bombed it many, many times. I don't know if the port in Lebanon, the Beirut port, if the Israelis were behind that. There was, I think we still don't know for sure what the reason was today. I wouldn't be surprised if they had something to do with it, but I don't know for 100%. But it is no secret that the Israelis have tried to destroy Syria's infrastructure. And the United States has tried to take Syria's natural resources, like the oil, and Israel tried to take Lebanon's natural resources, like the gas. And Syria also has a lot of unexplored gas in the Mediterranean Sea. So my point is that there's a lot of potential, not just in terms of resources, but because of Syria's geographical location, for this partnership with China. And it is a no-brainer to have Syria included in the new Silk Road, not just because of how it used to be in the ancient one, but because of its many, many, many ancient cities. This is, after all, if you look at Iraq and Syria and Mesopotamia, this is where what is called the cradle of civilization, right? So agriculture, writing, everything, all the three major religions, so Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they all have roots here. And the Middle East has always been the center of international affairs. So it makes perfect sense that China would try to get Syria in on a strategic partnership, and not just because they like Bashar al-Assad and his his government or something like that. They want to frame it like China is trying to build a second axis of evil or something. They're just, this is just stupid. I saw some Israeli commenting on I-24 about why China is doing this, and she thought that it's because the Chinese are trying to court the global South, as if China is not part of the global South.
I know that's been a narrative, right? And the Chinese media has pushed back on this, but continue.
Yeah, exactly. And they just want to check boxes of evil countries or global South countries that they can get on their side. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's so simple. It's so simple and clear what the nature of the relationship is, but they just, it doesn't fit the Israeli propaganda, so they have to do their thing. And it sounds very, very much like the crap you'll hear in British press and German and French press, for that matter.
Yeah, well, you bring up an interesting point, especially in regards to Israel and the way that relations with Syria and really anyone in the axis of resistance in the West Asia, for example, complicates things. And I often get the question, well, Danny, what about China and Israel? And one of the guiding principles of China's development over the last 40 plus years has been hide your strength, bide your time. And by what's so interesting about this move with Syria is that and it will, when China says we have a strategic partnership, it's not like Biden going to Vietnam and saying we're in a strategic partnership now, and oh yeah, we'll give you some old F-16s if you want them, and then you can go kick rocks and do what we say on China. And oh, you want something? Well, build our stuff for us. How about that? Oh, it's a little expensive. It's a little hard. We're not helping you. We're not giving you market access. Tough. Get over it. That's the way the U.S. treats others.
True.
But when it comes to China, there will be, with this partnership, with the Belt and Road, Syria joined the Belt and Road Initiative, what was that, a year and a half ago, within the last couple of years. There will be infrastructure development. There will be rebuilding happening. It'll be really interesting to see. This is one of the things that China's economic relationship has done with many other countries is once that infrastructure gets built, will Israel feel so emboldened to bomb that infrastructure? Because that complicates the relationship, because Israel needs China's assistance, needs its economic relationship with China too. So after the Mao period, the politics changed dramatically. There was a different way of talking about things, and especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, this is kind of the way that China's been trying to build up its influence, not through taking over and taking harsh positions and saying we're on this side of the war or that side of a war. But with things like the Iran-Saudi Arabia talks, with
Yeah.
Syria strategic partnership, like these things change politics without
Though,
China having to say, well, we're on
yeah,
Syria's side versus whoever their
those
adversary
by
is.
doing those things you just mentioned, the strategic partnership with Syria, with Iran, and then also the peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which then helped the relations between Syria and Saudi Arabia and Yemen and Saudi Arabia. These things are against Israel's interest. So I think you know if you want to look at it that way, there's no question about it that that really upset the Israelis. Now, with Saudi Arabia, obviously, because of what Netanyahu and MBS were saying in the last 2 weeks, they're still going to normalize ties, which is disappointing. But again, this has nothing to do with China. So I would say, if if the Israelis could have their way, they would rather zero investment from China, but no help of China's between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and investment in Syria. So actually, if you take these things into consideration, they are to Israel's disadvantage. And like you said, I don't think the Israelis, well, I'm not saying they won't, but they will think twice about bombing things that the Chinese build. And I can also bring up Russia, because Russia, it's funny because actually during the visit, Xi Jinping was saying that Syria was the first country to recognize the People's Republic of China, and also when it comes to the Israelis, the Soviet Union was the first to recognize them. So Russia and Syria have a very tight relationship, even though the Russians also have one with Israel. Perhaps it's not that close, but many Israelis actually are Russian Jews or Ukrainian Jews, and or Polish Jews. And in the 20th century, if you look at the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union, it was one country. So I don't think that the fact that, I mean, like I said, it would be it would be preferable that China and Russia obviously did not engage with Israel, but they do have a very good relationship with Syria, and the former does not negate that. It matters a lot more, for example, that Saudi Arabia, which is an Arab country, has a relationship with Israel, because they're shanking the Palestinians. They have geographically, they're much closer to Palestine. They have a much, it's supposed to be, and was, one country for during many dynasties, one tongue, one religion, one common tongue, one religion. So there's a much bigger problem with Saudi Arabia normalizing ties with Israel than there is with China and Russia, who have already had ties with Israel for a long time, and who are now actually doing things that are to Israel's disadvantage. So yeah, I don't know what we can do to negate or nullify the relationship between China and Israel, or Russia and Israel, but good thing that they actually are on Syria's side, and they are on Syria's side and do things that are to Syria's advantage without saying it perhaps to Israel directly.
Yeah, the relationship in regards, how I've looked at it, especially since Russia came to the aid of Syria around 2015 in the conflict, was that Russia is providing the military assistance, of course, diplomatic assistance as well, but military assistance, just a game changer there. And then China has been building up the capacity to become the driving force of rebuilding, because we know it's not going to be the Western countries that did this to Syria. And
they would like to.
And we know it's not a lot of the regional countries, which unfortunately, maybe some of them are changing their tune now, like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others, but most of them
they see
also
money in it. That's their only reason.
Exactly. And they were heavily invested also in the destruction of Syria up until the last couple of years. So Could you talk about what the situation is in Syria right now? As I want to pull up, and I'll pull up a couple of videos to show just the reception that Bashar
Yeah.
al-Assad received by the Chinese people, because I think it is quite something. If we're talking about two global
Yes.
South countries, unlike Israel and the United States, seeing China as outside of the global South, it seems that Chinese people view things a little differently. But what's the situation inside of Syria right now?
Well, it's in dire need of China's economic and industrial drive. That's for sure. So right now the situation is that the front line has not moved since 2019. Um, you have very, very bad sanctions in place since the Trump administration. I mean, they've been going on since Obama, but the Caesar Act sanctions have been in place since Pompeo and Trump got them done in 2021, and Biden has kept those in place. And 80% of people in Syria are in poverty. They are living in the whole country is living with food insecurity, and the price of gas is through the roof. Everything is rationed. There's not enough medicine. The currency. I mean, the inflation is so bad. And also, if you look at the regions that the U.S. controls in the east, so this is where the Kurds are as well, and where the oil fields happen to be. So over there, the United States does this by basically they it's not enough to have the Kurds on their side. They also, some of the Arab tribes that are there, they need to play ball. And it's not that they like the Americans, but they basically they don't stand a chance really, because the United States has several bases there. They have an air base there in Al Tanaf down in the south, and you've had sort of a revolt in the last couple of weeks against the SDF. So these are the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is it's just basically the Kurds. It's an umbrella group run by the Kurds and the U.S. And so the Arab tribes are angry because the United States keeps giving them preferential treatment. You know that the U.S. keeps promoting this idea of like a Kurdistan in Syria, which is ridiculous because in these areas where the Kurds want their own country, the oil is there, all the crops are grown there. So Syria would lose its most valuable resources, and the Kurds are not even a majority. So it's like if if they want to start claiming this as their own country, I mean, I can find you 20 other minorities in Syria who could then also just say the same thing. So the Arab tribes are the majority there, and Syria was already like carved up many times, and the last time, the last time that it was really shrunk was by the UK and France. So with Sykes-Picot in 19, yeah, exactly. So they carved it up into Lebanon and Jordan and so on, and it was done on on sectarian lines, which is the way they do this, right, on purpose. And that's what the U.S. is trying to do again now. It's to do it by sectarian lines, which is the opposite of how Syria works, because Syria is secular. It's a secular country. There's separation of church and state, or mosque and state. It's a majority Muslim country, but it's you have 10% who are Arab Christian, like myself, or you have many Palestinians in Syria, Armenians. You have so not Syrians, but Assyrians, or Syriac. You have just tons of all kinds of Christians and Muslims, and you have Jews and all kinds of ethnic groups. So it's so ridiculous for the Kurds to say, okay, well, we want to take 1/3 of the country, and I mean, because they're a minority. Yeah, they're, like I said, 50 other minorities. They can all. Is everyone going to have their own chunk now? This is just Western colonialism to carve up the country. So this has caused a split, and the United States are trying to remedy the situation, because ultimately what they want to do is connect the everything that's east of the Euphrates River, which they already control, and connect that to the air base at Al Tanaf at the bottom, which is at the intersection of the border with Jordan and Iraq. Because by doing that, they would block the border between Syria and Iraq. They would control it. And this would not only be bad for Syria, but bad for China and bad for Iran. Iran just built signed a railway deal with Iraq. And this railway is obviously going to play a big part in the new Silk Road. And so by controlling this area, you would block China's access and really everybody else's access to the Mediterranean Sea going through Syria. And you can see, for example, the other week how Ted Cruz, who, I mean, God, they're all bad in Congress, but Ted Cruz was complaining that the United States has been giving, Iran 16 billion, which is ridiculous. No, there is 6 billion that was stolen from Iran in South Korea and moved to Qatar. It's still controlled by the US. But they're letting Iran have a little bit of it. And the other 10 billion is money that Iraq owes Iran for petroleum products, but the United States was not allowing Iraq to pay its bill, because Iraq is also under U.S. control. So it looks like they're finally allowing Iraq to pay its bill. And apparently for Ted Cruz, this is giving Iran money. I mean,
it's always
it's painful. Yeah. So you see how this plays into the Silk Road. It's very, very important. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And it's quite clear, as you said, Syria needs friends, and China is probably one of the most important, if not the most important, especially economically. Yes. Now, Chinese people will warmly receive, and maybe we can close on this very positive note, because it's very interesting to see this kind of reaction. Mm-hmm. First, we'll play a short clip of an interview that Bashar Al-Assad did with CGTN Leaders Talk, where the interviewer is going to show the responses and replies to Bashar al-Assad's visit during the Hangzhou Asia Games. So the Asia Games that were held in Hangzhou during his visit. He went to the opening ceremony. And then Asma al-Assad, quite popular with the younger Chinese women. So we're going to see just how deeply connected Chinese people feel also to the Syrian people, which often we talk government to government, diplomacy, nation to nation, even multipolarity. We talk a lot about how these countries are going a different direction, but we don't often get to talk about how people actually feel about this.
Right,
and here we get to see in a big way what solidarity really looks like. So here, let's start with this short clip on the interview with Bashar al-Assad.
这次您跟夫人还出席了亚运会的开幕式。当叙利亚代表团入场的时候，现场可以说是热烈而沸腾。我想与您分享一段视频，是当时叙利亚代表团入场的场景。
叙利亚代表团由32名运动员组成。
当时在现场的那种热烈的场景，人们在欢呼。而与此同时呢，其实，在场外，在中国的社交媒体上啊，这个话题呢也是冲上了热搜。有很多的中国网友，他们都留下了很多的评论。我读了很多的评论，觉得很感动。在这儿呢，我也想与您分享其中的几条。有网友就写到说，在废墟里也要仰望星空。还有人说，展现给世界的不光是满目疮痍，还有无限的生机和活力。也有网友写道。 请让玫瑰开满大马士革，和平与爱留在这片身处荒漠也抬头仰望的土地。听完这些网友的评论，以及您跟夫人在现场感受到的那种场景，您想对中国的观众和网友说些什么吗？
طبعا أنا أذكر هذه اللحظة بشكل دقيق لأنها لحظة مؤثرة عندما هتف الشعب الصيني أو الجمهور الصيني في الملعب لدخول الفريق السوري. وهذا يعني الكثير في مثل هذه الحالة لأنها لحظة عفوية. هذا هو الشعب الصيني. وأحيانا نعتقد بأننا بسبب المسافات نبتعد عن بعضنا عاطفيا وربما بالمفاهيم مختلفة. هذه اللحظة كانت كافية لتقول بأن الصين وسوريا على المستوى الشعبي هما قريبين من بعضهما البعض. لكن بالنسبة لمستخدمي الإنترنت وحول هذا الحدث بالذات، أنا أريد أن أوجه الشكر لهم على اهتمامهم وعلى التعليقات التي قرأنا بعضا منها وكانت مؤثرة جدا، وعلى معرفتهم لعلاقة سوريا بالصين التاريخية والحديثة ولما يحصل في سوريا، وعلى محبتهم لسوريا. ولكن تحديدا بالنسبة للافتتاح بالذات، فأنا أريد أن أقول بأن رسالة التي وصلتنا عبر الافتتاح وعبر مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي هي تتقاطع أو ترتبط ببعضها البعض، هي عظمة الصين وكبرياء الصين مع التواضع الصيني.
So pretty kind words there from both sides. And before I have you comment on that, I want to show you Asma Al-Assad. She was swarmed by Chinese students, young Chinese students, when she was visiting. I believe this was the Beijing Foreign Studies University. So here's the scene.
I haven't seen this. Dude, Biden's wife can't even get a crowd like that in the U.S.
Well, it's funny because when I was last in China, I said this. I was like, the way there are Chinese celebrities in the traditional sense, like music, entertainment, acting, that sort of thing. But there's also like the celebritification of people you never expect to be celebrities. People who like served in like rural villages and did like really good things for people. Leaders like Asma Al-Assad, like that's like a weird. You would think that's a strange thing because first of all, Asma Al-Assad is the first lady of a president who is maybe one of the most maligned leaders in the world, at least by the West. But yet here she is being swarmed like she was Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, it shows you how irrelevant the pathetic people calling themselves journalists at The Guardian are. I remember they were threatening to because she's also British actually, Asma Assad, and they were threatening to withdraw her citizenship, I think, or they were whispers of it in the press, which I think is pathetic. Like she's the first. What is she, like Eva Brown or something? They're acting like oh, she did something so un-British that we have to take away her passport. Piss off. Well, like I can think of a million people. I mean, I'm against this nationality and borders bill for a million reasons, and this is how they get you, because first they say, well, we're only going to take away the citizenship of known terrorists, right? Like that's how it starts, and then it's like, oh, okay, no, let's do it also for Asma Al-Assad, or for this person. That's how it begins. So I don't support it in the first place, but like just figuratively speaking, I can think of a million people who would deserve that, and she is not anywhere. She has nothing to do with this. It's like when they sanctioned his son. The guy was like not even 18. Does he even have a bank account? What are you going to sanction? It's pathetic, really, really pathetic. And I don't know. I guess they do these things because they lost the war. But I think it's really nice comments that they that she just read out from people on the internet. Really, really nice, really nice. And it's I was kind of regretting I didn't learn Chinese. That's the only bad thing about the multipolar world. My 4 languages that I speak do not include Russian and Chinese.
You can speak another one. Yeah, I know, right? We're all feeling behind.
I really should not have learned German. What a waste of time. I should have gone with Russia or Chinese. What? No, yeah. I'm kidding, but also it's there's a reason they're UN languages and German is not. So I mean, again, Arabic, French, English also really important. But I think this is another reality that people are going to be confronted with this multipolar world. Is that like, and the just like what you said, how things are different in China, and things will be different in the world, because it's not the West that will set the standard for languages, or who is a celebrity, or who is maligned or sanctioned. You know, I think this is a sobering thing, but it was really, really nice that they invited, because again, Assad was invited. He didn't invite himself, and also during the Asian Games opening ceremony. So that was very nice. And I was really happy to see that. And if you don't include the UAE and Saudi Arabia, the only non-Arab countries that Assad has visited in the last years are Russia, Iran, and China. So that says it all.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.